Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we'll be looking at a brand new box which comes out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. It's called Eternal Stream and we're looking at the ultra rares. So the first card is Grapha Dragonlord of Darkworld. It's a dark attribute fiend type level 8 with 2700 attack and 1800 defense. And its effect is you can special summon this card from your graveyard by returning one Darkworld monster you control to the hand, except Grapha Dragonlord of Darkworld. If this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, target one card your opponent controls, destroy that target. Then, if this card was discarded from your hand to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, look at one random card in your opponent's hand. Then, if it was a monster, you can special summon it to your field. Now, this is one of the key components of the Darkworld archetype. It has the ability to just special summon itself by returning a Darkworld monster. For a 2700 attack monster, in comparison to what most monsters tend to be, for a 1 tribute you can get things like Luster Dragon, which are 2400, but that tends to be at the higher premium side of it. I know of also you've got things like Goblin Elite Attack Force, which has similar attack in that it's got 2300 and it's a level 4 monster, but this also comes with the abilities of most of the Dark Worlds, which when they're discarded by an opponent's card effect, they get an additional effect alongside their original effect. So the original one is if it's discarded, you're able to just destroy an opponent's card, which is useful. It can be any card, it could be a field spell, it could be one of their back row cards, or it could be one of their monsters. You can take out whichever thing you think is going to be the most threatening. The other thing about having to discard an opponent's card is if it happens to be a monster, then you are able to then benefit from that monster, whatever its abilities are. Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon is a light attribute dragon type Xyz monster. It's a rank 8 with 4500 attack and 3000 defense, and it requires 3 level 8 monsters to summon it. Its effect is if this card is Xyz summoned using Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon as any of its materials, all other face-up cards currently on the field have their effects negated. Once per turn, you can detach one material from this card, detach all materials from monsters your opponent controls, then this card gains 500 attack for each. Also, it can attack up to that many times during each battle phase this turn. So this is meant to be like the most powerful form of the original Galaxy Eyes. Much in the same, you've got the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. This is the equivalent in the Xyz form of Galaxy Eyes. The summoner conditions might seem a bit steep considering it needs 3 level 8 monsters, but you're able to easily manipulate your monsters to reach those levels. Just look at cards such as Photon Caesar, which essentially allows it to bring out another level 8 monster. I'm sure there are other ones as well which meet those requirements, or are able to adjust their levels to become level 8 to easily Xyz summon into this card. The benefit of having Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon as part of the materials is so that you actually incorporate that within the deck. I mean, it is the main monster and the boss monster for Kite. And to be able to shut down all of your opponent's face-up effects means they're not able to really respond to you. If they have a very stall-based deck, this can actually be very devastating, because you can just rip through them. You might actually be able to win in that turn. The part of the effect to do with detaching the material to basically gain attack points for each Xyz material detached is neither here nor there. Whilst it's a good idea to have this as an effect, it's not always useful depending on what your opponent is running. If they're not running Xyz monsters, or you've summoned this before they summon an Xyz monster, they're not likely to then go into an Xyz monster unless they really are that confident they're able to deal with the Neo Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon on that turn. And of course, the icing on the cake is the ability to attack just as many times as the materials kind of used up. The benefit of this is it can, if necessary, end within an OTK. It's not having to be directly on monsters. It can also be through direct attacks. The slight disadvantage is it does rely on what your opponent has, unless of course you're trying to, give your opponent some of your Xyz monsters, in which case that might be a step too far. My biggest concern is the deck slot to the extra deck slot as it is very limited. You've got, I think, a maximum of 7 spaces. They added 1 or 2 within the last year or so, just when they introduced Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, so that people had a little bit more options, so that they could make a more diverse deck. I mean, you look at things such as Blue Eyes White Dragon decks. They run Xyz monsters, they run Fusion, which is their Blue Eyes Twin Dragon. They have Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and then the Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. And then they also have Xyz monsters, and they've got Synchro monsters to tackle with as well, so some of these decks actually need that space. Heroic Challenger Excalibur is a light attribute warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2000 attack and 2000 defense. It requires just 2 level 4 warrior type monsters, and the effect is once per turn you could attach 2 Xyz materials from this card. This card's attack becomes double its original attack until your opponent's next end phase. This is actually a very useful card and has been introduced. Mostly when I see it used by certain duelists, they tend to be running Yuma as the main character. They don't tend to be supporting anyone else. I can see why, because they can easily bring out level 4 monsters. Goblinberg is a warrior type monster, and that can actually bring out another monster from the hand. There are alternative options as well. You've got the Onomatopoeia deck, which likes to special summon all of these different Go Go Go, Ga Ga Ga, Do Do Do, and Zubababa monsters, which are different parts of the same kind of archetype, and they can meet this condition very easily. It's really used as a finisher for most of the games. When it gets to 4000 attack, that's usually enough to get rid of any of your opponent's threats, but alternatively, it's just used to actually defeat your opponent then and there. I like the fact that it does have the disadvantage of only being able to double the original attack. Imagine if this had been souped up with Power of the Guardian, or some of these other equipped spells, United We Stand, Mage Power, any of those types of cards running around. That would make this card far too powerful if it could just boost all of its stats so it becomes double. That would just be too much. And at least it does have the level of protection that it keeps those 4000 attack points until your opponent's next end phase, as that means it has the chance to survive. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King is a fire attribute beast warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2200 attack and 1800 defense. It requires 2 level 4 beast warrior type monsters to summon it. Its effect: when this card is Xyz summoned, you can set 1 fire formation spell or trap card directly from your deck. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, negate the effects of all face-up effect monsters currently on the field, except beast warriors until the end of the opponent's turn. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can send 3 fire formation spell or trap cards you control to the graveyard, special summon at 2 level 4 or lower beast warrior monsters with the same attack from your deck in face-up defense position. I love the design of this card, and I know it's very big within the Fire Fist archetype. The ability to just set any of your random fire formation cards means you're able to use any of those opportunities, whatever those effects may be. I know a couple of them do some searching, some of them give some power stats in terms of their attack, others are able to shut down what your opponents do. So having the pick of the choice is always a good idea. I like the fact that you can shut down all of your opponent's monsters' effects, considering that most of your Fire Fist monsters will be Beast Warrior anyway. That's how the archetype runs. Mostly your opponent isn't going to be using those types of monsters, and if they are, you're not going to trigger this effect anyway, so you're not wasting anything. My biggest concern is when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard. By being able to, send 3 fire formation spell or traps, you're able to replace those with 2 level 4 or lower Beast Warrior monsters. That effect isn't likely to go off, simply because Duel Links only allows 3 spell and trap zones, and unlikely you're going to be able to draw into the necessary cards, and you don't even know when your opponent is going to have the monsters or the card set up to be able to get rid of this card in general. UA Powered Jersey is an equipped spell card with the effect: equip only to a UA monster. It gains 1000 attack and defense. Also, if it battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage it inflicts to your opponent is doubled. If the equipped monster destroys a monster by its attack, it can make a second attack during this battle phase. During your standby phase, banish this equipped monster. If this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster returned to the hand, you can return this card to the hand. I have to say I hate the UAs, not for any particular reason. I think they're a perfectly powerful archetype and they're actually quite decent. I remember at a particular time there was nothing but UAs within Duel Links, and it was an absolute nuisance to try and counter. They kept swapping themselves out within the hand. Some would shut cards down, some would actually destroy other cards, and that meant you would always be out of your resources by the time you thought you could actually deal with their combos. It wasn't one of those easier decks to kind of face, and I'm glad to an extent that they didn't receive this card until now, otherwise they would have become just that more annoying. The ability is actually quite decent for what it can do. The 1000 attack and defense boost is quite nice in itself. Most cards won't give you that level of protection or boost without some kind of downside. I know you've got Acts of Fools and you've got Acts of Despair, but there are other ones such as Rising Energy, which is a trap card, which requires you to discard a card to improve your monster's attack points by 1,500. The ability to double the battle damage can be enough to wipe out your opponent if they're on low life points, or even if you're able to swarm the field with some of your UA monsters, that's always a secondary option. The ability to attack twice if your opponent has attack position monsters and you're able to do double damage, essentially. You're definitely going to OTK them, that is no concern. It does come at the drawback that you do have to banish the equipped monster, but the whole point is this is the card you play last. This is the last trump card you have to be able to defeat your opponent and to potentially OTK them. But of course, how the UAs like to swap out means you're able to also return this card back to the hand if you ever have to do that. Dream Mirror of Terror is a field spell with the effect, during the end phase you can banish this card, activate one Dream Mirror of Joy directly from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Dream Mirror of Terror once per turn. Each time your opponent special summons a monster, inflict 300 damage to your opponent. This effect is only applied while you control a Dark Dream Mirror monster. For a field spell, this is very niche and very specific to the archetype. The effect to be able to banish it to bring out a new field spell called Dream Mirror of Joy isn't particularly that useful. I don't think its effect is that great. And even just looking at this card, oh wow, you're doing 300 points of damage for every time your opponent special summons a monster. You also have to have a Dark Dream Mirror monster on the field to be able to trigger this. So if you get rid of your opponent's monster, they can't do anything. Also consider that it's not 300 points of damage. The Link's rulings now are it's half the amount of burn damage because you've got half the amount of life points. So it's only 150. It's not enough to be of concern. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Elephant is a fire attribute Beast Warrior type level 4 with 1000 attack and 1800 defense. And its effect is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one face-up fire formation spell or trap card you control to the graveyard. Special summon one Fire Fist monster from your hand, except Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Elephant. You can target one fire formation spell or trap card in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, then you can add one level 5 or higher Fire Fist monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Elephant once per turn. I love the design of this card, and actually it helps to recycle how your fire formation spell and trap cards work. Basically, the idea is the fire formation cards also have a once per activation effect where when they're first activated you get search or you get to do something else, and then they might have just a secondary ability which is to boost up your Fire Fist monsters or your Beast Warrior monsters by 100 or a few hundred attack points, which is okay, but it's nothing, it's nothing game breaking here. And so by being able to just send it to the graveyard to bring out a new Fire Fist monster, you're then able to go into your Fire Fist Tiger King. If you want to go into that Xyz play, you're then able to return that fire formation card back from your graveyard to the deck in hopes to be able to draw it at some point within the duel. And you're not even punished for it because you're then able to bring out a higher level Fire Fist monster from the deck to your hand. So you're consistently adding to your hand and you're not actually having any disadvantages from these effects. Dark Ruler No More is a normal spell card with the effect negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. This is a card that's long been awaiting Duel Links, and it's one of those very powerful cards which is a staple within normal mainstream Yu-Gi-Oh! The ability to shut down all of your opponent's effects from their monsters means you're able to play your turn without having to rely on having to get rid of those cards to begin with. That means you're able to stall or you're able to set your play, especially useful if you've had to go second and your opponent's already got their board set up. The only downside is, of course, that your opponent isn't able to take any damage, but they did have to balance this based on just how powerful this effect is. And the final ultra rare is Icarus, the Dream Mirror Sprite. It's a light attribute fairy type level 1 with 0 attack and 500 defense. And its effect is, if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, you can add one Dream Mirror card from your deck to your hand, except Icarus, the Dream Mirror Sprite. During the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Terror is in a field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card, special summon one Icarus, the Dream Mirror Mara from your deck. You can only use each effect of Icarus, the Dream Mirror Sprite, once per turn. I think the Dream Mirror archetype's quite useless anyway, so having this ability isn't really going to move the needle for you. If you can prove me wrong, please put those in the comments, but I don't actually see the utility of this deck. I know you can switch the different field spells, and I know you can switch out for some of the other monsters, but neither of the monsters summoned, the boss monsters, are that useful, and we'll be covering the secret rares. Trap Hole is a normal trap card with the effect when your opponent normal or flip summons one monster with 1,000 or more attack, target that monster and destroy that target. This is particularly useful depending on what your opponent is running. I know there are certain decks that do have some of the weaker monsters and are able to just outshine this effect. For example, some of the Ancient Stone cards from Blue Eyes White Dragon archetype, or you've got the Red Eyes Black Stone, which is part of the Red Eyes Black Dragon archetype. But for the most part, most monsters cover at least this level of power, which means if they do normal summon, they get punished, and in that case, you're able to stop their continual play, especially if they're looking to do something like an Xyz summon within the same turn. It's one of the original trap cards that was introduced way back in Legend of Blue Eyes, which was the first pack, alongside, I think it was Dragon Capture Jar, and there was another trap card as well, I think it was called Two-Pronged Attack. Fire Formation Tenki is a continuous spell card with the effect, when this card is activated, you can add one level 4 or lower Beast Warrior type monster from your deck to your hand. All Beast Warrior monsters you control gain 100 attack. You can only activate one Fire Formation Tenki per turn. So, like I said, it's a bit of a rotor for the deck. It works for Beast Warrior type monsters, and they don't have to necessarily be Fire Fist monsters. They just have to meet the condition of being a Beast Warrior. That in itself is quite decent, but the ability to have those monsters become an additional 100 attack can make a difference in the longer game when your opponent's life points might be a point where 100 points could end their game. Number 64, Ronin Raccoon Sendayu, is a Earth Attribute Beast type Xyz monster. It's a rank 2 with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. It requires 2 level 2 Beast type monsters to summon. Once per turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, special summon one Kagamusha Raccoon token. It's a Beast type, Earth Attribute level 1, with question mark attack and 0 defense. When summoned, its attack becomes equal to the current attack of the monster on the field that has the highest attack, your choice if tied. While you control another Beast-type monster, this card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Now, this card actually was seen within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, the anime. It was one of the Mytherian numbers which was attached to Girag, who was one of the Barian Emperors, and originally when he was a human, this was the card that helped him reach his legendary status as a knight or as a samurai, I think he was. Its ability is really useful, and it can be considered a bit of a win harder card, because if you're already winning the duel and you've already got another monster with very powerful attack stat, maybe stronger than what your opponent has, you can just summon the token and it will replicate that strongest attack. Alternatively, if your opponent has something which is incredibly strong, then maybe you just summon the token, it copies your opponent's strongest monster's attack, and then you either want to crash the token into that monster, or you can equip it with things like Power of the Guardian or other boosting cards, which will overthrow your opponent, and then be able to defeat them maybe with this card. The other advantage I've got to say is the ability to have this card protect itself, so long as you've got any beast type monsters out there. It doesn't have to be the tokens, although the tokens do help with its effect. It's not the only other way. So long as you've got another beast type, this card is protected. The downside of it is it's just a giant target. If your opponent sees you've got a powerful monster and they're able to bring out something that can attack maybe a couple of times, they will look at this monster and they will attack this rather than going into your strongest monster. That way they might be able to close out the game. I would also like to say this card is susceptible to the effects of other cards on the field. The Closed Forest Field spell is an example of this. Basically what that card does is it boosts your beast type attack points by 100 times the number of monsters you've got in your graveyard, I think. And that basically means all of your monsters will already be of a certain level, which means if, for example, you then lose your Closed Forest Field spell, if you've already summoned a token, it will actually reduce by the stat lineup of that Closed Forest Field spell when that had been activated. So if your opponent has a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you've copied that, and that becomes a 3000 attack monster, it will lose hundreds of attack points, and therefore will not be able to match to the same power as your opponent's Blue Eyes White Dragon. Full Armoured Black Ray Lancer is a water attribute Beast Warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2100 attack and 600 defense. It requires 3 level 4 water monsters to summon it. You can also Xyz summon this card by using a rank 3 water Xyz monster you control that has no materials as the Xyz material. This card gains 200 attack for each Xyz material attached to it. If this face-up card would be destroyed, you can detach all of its Xyz materials instead. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can target one spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. So this is a really decent card. It's supposed to be an evolution of Shark's Black Ray Lancer, but it has a completely different effect. Whereas that has the ability to shut down your opponent's monster effects, this has the ability to destroy back row cards. Whilst its summoning condition isn't the easiest to meet because requiring 3 level 4 water monsters is very specific, it can also be ranked up just by using a rank 3 water Xyz monster. So that has no materials, so you've got to think of number 17 Leviathan Dragon. I think there's a couple of other monsters of Xyz variety that actually have this condition as well, so they all tie together. The attack point boost is neither here nor there. It's okay as an effect, but it's something that could be missed from it and it wouldn't really make too much difference. I suppose the one way it does boost in that you're able to get over some more of your opponent's monsters and then hopefully be able to trigger off that back row destruction effect. My only concern with this card is that it does have to destroy that monster by battle. So if your opponent is able to trigger something during the battle phase to shut you down or to stop this monster from attacking, then you'll never actually see this effect through to the end, and your opponent is probably going to get rid of this within the next turn anyway. Heroic Challenger Assault Halberd is an Earth Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 1800 attack and 200 defense. And its effect is, if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can add one heroic card from your deck to your hand. So I love the design of this card. It's one of the cards that's useful for summoning the heroic champion Excalibur, as it's just able to special summon itself, and being able to do piercing damage means it can get through some of your opponent's defensive monsters. It's also then able to search for any heroic card, be it a monster, spell, or trap card, adding to its diversity. Onomatopoeia is a field spell card with the effect, each time a Utopia monster is special summoned to your side of the field, place one high five the sky counter on this card. All monsters you control gain 200 attack and defense for each high five the sky counter on this card. Once per turn, you can remove 2 high five the sky counters from this card, special summon one Zubalbaba, Gagaga, Go-Go-Go, or Dododo monster from your deck. The whole purpose of this is Yuma has a lot of different Utopia monsters. Most of them are rank 4, but you do have a couple that are, I think Roots is rank 1, you've got a couple that are rank 5, you've got one that's a rank 10. Most of those haven't been introduced into the game as of yet, but I'm sure they will do within the immediate or near future anyway. So you're able to continuously boost your monster's attack points up, but you might only get a couple of these effects off. The other advantage is you're then able to search for one of those monsters in the archetype if you happen to have 2 or more counters, just by getting rid of those 2 counters. So, for example, Gagagar are synonymous with being able to manipulate lots of their levels, from levels 1 all the way up to level 8, which means you can go into a greater variety of Xyz monsters without a lot of the restrictions necessary to play around or manipulate levels like you would within some of the other decks. UA Signing Deal is a normal spell card with the effect Special Summon 1 UA monster from your deck, but its effects are negated. Also, it cannot be used as Synchro or Xyz material for a summon. Then you lose life points equal to that monster's level times 300. You can only activate 1 UA Signing Deal per turn. So the whole point of this card is you're able to bring out a UA monster, but it does have its effects depleted, and it's also not being able to use for the summoning of extra deck monsters. I think that's fine because some of the higher level monsters are quite powerful of themselves. Even if they're just vanilla monsters, you're able to use them to be able to just beat over your opponent or to potentially OTK. It does require the cost of your life points, so if you do have one of the level 7s or 8s, you are losing potentially 2,100 or 2,400 life points, but that's the price you have to pay in order to maybe get that level of advantage. Eternal Galaxy is a normal trap card with the effect, if you control a Photon or Galaxy monster, target one Xyz monster you control, special summon from your extra deck one Photon or Galaxy Xyz monster that is 4 ranks higher than that target by using that target as the material. This is treated as an Xyz summon. Transfer its materials to the summon monster. You can only activate 1 Eternal Galaxy per turn. So this is the example I was meaning to mention, where you're able to go into your Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon without too much conditioning or having to expend too many resources. My only concern is that it does require you to use a Photon or a Galaxy monster needs to be present on the field, so if you don't have anything or you've depleted your resources before you can do that. The other thing is you do need an Xyz monster already on the field, and consider that if you're doing that, you're not going to get the full effect of the Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, simply because Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon is not going to be attached to it. So it's swings and roundabouts. There are the benefits of being able to speed up and go into that monster, but you don't get the full niceties of the shut down everything of your opponent's monster's effects. Icarus, the Dream Mirror Mara, is a Dark Attribute Fairy type level 1 with 500 attack and 0 defense. Its effect is, if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, you can special summon 1 Dream Mirror monster from your hand, except Icarus, the Dream Mirror Mara. During the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Joy is in the field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon 1 Icarus, the Dream Mirror Sprite from your deck. You can only use each effect of Icarus, the Dream Mirror Mara once per turn. Again, the Dream Mirror archetype is very boring. They tend to trade themselves out, but their monsters aren't even that strong, and conditioning based on having a specific field spell on the field is not a good idea. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Eland is a Fire Attribute Beast Warrior type ritual monster. It's a level 6 with 2,400 attack and 2,000 defense. And its effect is, you can ritual summon this card with Fire Formation Dome. You can discard 1 monster, set 1 Fire Formation spell or trap card directly from your deck or graveyard. When your opponent activates a monster effect, as a quick effect, you can send 1 face-up Fire Fist or Fire Formation card you control to the graveyard, except Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Eland. Negate that effect. You can only use each effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Eland once per turn. So the first thing you're able to do is to just search out for one of your Fire Formation spell or trap cards, which can be very useful depending on what they like to do. And it's also able to shut down your opponent's effects, which is useful, especially being a quick effect, can be used during your opponent's turn to stop them going off on their turn. My only concern is it is a bit of a heavy investment to go into this monster, considering that most of the Fire Formation cards in the Fire Fist cards tend to be level 4 or level 3. That means you are going to have to ritual summon using potentially 3 cards, which is the Fire Formation Domain, and potentially a level 3 or a level 4 plus another level 3 or another level 4 as well, just to meet the level requirements. And the final secret rare card is Charge into a Dark World. It's a normal spell card with the effect target one level 4 or lower fiend monster in your graveyard, special summon it, then discard one fiend monster. You can only activate one Charge into a Dark World per turn. So the whole idea of this is you're able to just then special summon a Dark World monster, and it doesn't matter really what you send through its secondary ability, because most of the time you're able to then special summon the monster that is sent by this effect, so therefore it mitigates its own disadvantage, considering that all of the Dark Worlds want to be discarded some way or another. So what do you guys think of the secret rares? Is there anything in particular you liked? Is there anything you thought did not deserve its place in there? And we'll be covering the rares. Gagaga Shield is a normal trap card with the effect target one spellcaster monster you control, equip this card to that target. Twice per turn it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. What I love about this card is it doesn't have to be to a Gagaga card. Whilst it does have that within the main text, it's not specific to anything other than being a spellcaster type monster. Having this level of protection means that if you've got a Dark Magician deck or one other spellcaster orientated deck, then you're able to protect those cards up to twice per turn. It reminds me a little bit of Shield Wing, which is a specific card which is designed to support level 8. I think it's dragon type synchro monsters. So this is like a trap equivalent for the spellcasters. Heroic Champion Kusanagi is an Earth Attribute Warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2500 attack and 2400 defense. It requires 3 level 4 warrior type monsters to summon it, and the effect is once per turn during either player's turn. When a trap card is activated, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Then this card gains 500 attack. I hate when I have to deal with this card. It's an absolute nuisance, because typically your opponent will summon this first, and then potentially at that point they know it's game anyway, so they will have the cards necessary to bring something else out, and in which case you are doomed if the only thing you've got in your back row are trap cards. It's an absolute nightmare, considering it can use this effect up to 3 times, and become in itself a 4000 attack monster, with the ability to just shut down your trap cards. And it's not just shutting them down, it's actually destroying them. That means you can't really recover them. If you have to face this card, it's just an absolute nightmare, and it's probably the one you will need to focus on before you try and target Excalibur. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Lion Emperor is a fire attribute beast warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 3 with 2200 attack and 200 defense. It requires 2 level 3 fire attribute monsters, and the effect, once per turn you can detach one material from this card, then target one fire monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. But you cannot normal or special summon that monster or a monster with the same name for the rest of this turn. This card, whilst it is part of the Fire Fist archetype, can actually be splashed within any generic fire attribute deck, provided they run level 3 monsters. I mean, it simply recovers a fire attribute from the graveyard back to the hand, but of course you just can't use that monster within the same turn. It can be used for things like the Volcanic deck. I'm sure there's a couple of level 3s. I think Blaster is a level 3, and there might be 1 or 2 more that I'm missing. And there are probably generic forms of support as well. I think Ultimate Baseball Kid is an example, very niche example, but something you might want to consider splashing this card into to maybe boost its abilities. ZW Lightning Blade is a light attribute beast type level 5 with 1200 attack and 2000 defense. And its effect is you can target one Utopian monster you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. It gains 1200 attack. While this card is equipped to a monster, face-up ZW cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. If a monster equipped with this card would be destroyed by a card effect, destroy this card instead. You can only control one face-up ZW Lightning Blade. So this was part of a mini archetype which supported Utopia directly. You had a series of equip-based monsters that could equip mostly from the hand, but I think also from the field if you needed to, just for the sake of versatility. This is one of those examples. It being a level 5 doesn't make sense to really summon it in itself because you're going to have to tribute summon it to bring it out, or potentially you're going to have to recover it from the graveyard. There are a couple of niche examples where it can be summoned outside of those conditions. For example, if your Shining Angel gets destroyed in battle, you're able to summon a monster that's a level that isn't a level requirement so long as it's 1500 attack or less, and that 1200 meets those conditions, so you could do it that way. Alternatively, this can just be equipped from the hand, so it makes your Utopia monster 3700 attack, with the ability to protect all of your other Zexal weapon cards, because those can't be dealt with by your opponent's effects. So essentially, it's just a win harder card. It's able to dominate your opponent, and if you're able to equip some more cards onto your Utopia, it will easily become a 4000 plus attack monster. Zexal Weapon Tornado Bringer is a wind attribute dragon type level 5 with 1300 attack and 1800 defense. And its effect is you can target one Utopia monster you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. It gains 1300 attack. While this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot target that monster with card effects. If a monster equipped with this card would be destroyed by battle, destroy this card instead. You can only control one face-up Zexal Weapon Tornado Bringer. So what this does is it provides your Utopia monster with protection as it cannot be dealt with by your opponent's monster effects. That means you're able to shut down essentially 1/3 of your opponent's strategy, especially since mostly your opponent will be running more monsters than they will probably spell or trap cards, outside of maybe a couple of exceptions. For example, Odeon is very much a trap-based deck user. Outside of him, I don't think there are too many examples, and this does give your Utopia also a one-time form of protection. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Cardinal is a fire attribute Beast Warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 1800 attack and 2200 defense. It requires 2 level 4 Fire Fist monsters, and the effect is you can detach 2 Xyz materials from this card, then target 2 Fire Fist / Fire Formation cards in your graveyard and or face up on your side of the field, and 2 cards in your opponent's graveyard and or face up on their side of the field. Shuffle those targets into the deck. You can only use the effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Cardinal once per turn. So the really good thing about this card is it's able to shuffle some of your opponent's really annoying monsters or cards back into the deck. Once they're into the deck, it means it's a lot more difficult for them to search, whereas if they're already in the graveyard, they can be brought back, or if they're returned to the hand, they can actually be reused the next turn. And the same applies very much for yourself. You're recovering those resources from the graveyard, which means you might not necessarily draw into them, but at least having them means that you can maybe search them out through some additional effects, especially from some of your other archetypal support, which are naturally able to do that. Baby Raccoon Pompoko is an Earth attribute beast type level 2 with 800 attack and 0 defense. And its effect is, when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one level 2 beast type monster from your deck in face down defense position, except Baby Raccoon Pompoko. You cannot special summon any monsters during the turn you activate this effect, except beast-type monsters. This is part of a strategy known as the Baby Raccoons. It's a sub-archetype which supported number 64 Ronin Raccoon Sandayu. Of course, those being level 2 monsters can instantly bring those cards out. I think there's another one called Tantan, and then you've also got some generic support that has been splashed throughout a couple of series, most notably I think within Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds as well. You had Team Unicorn, who did have some level 2 monsters out there as well, so those easily pair together. It's a decent enough effect, and the only condition is that you can only special summon beast-type monsters for the rest of the turn. That's fine. Most likely you're going to be running a pure beast-type build anyway, if you're running this strategy. Baby Raccoon Tantan is an Earth attribute beast-type flip effect monster. It's a level 2 with 0 attack and 800 defense. The effect is to flip and to special summon one level 2 beast-type monster from your deck, except Baby Raccoon Tantan. So if you can keep this card around, you're able to then special summon Pompoko the next turn, and then you're able to then go into number 64, Ronin Raccoon Sandayu. Alternatively, you can actually go into Kalantosa, and when Kalantosa is summoned to the field, it's able to then destroy one of your opponent's cards. Morpheus the Dream Mirror White Knight is a light attribute warrior type level 8 monster with 1000 attack and 2800 defense. Its effect is if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, you can activate this effect. This card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects this turn. In the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Terror is in a field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon one Morpheus the Dream Mirror Black Knight from your deck. You can only use each effect of Morpheus the Dream Mirror White Knight once per turn. So this is one of the two boss monsters for the Dream Mirror archetype. And of course, it's bulky in its defense. 2800 isn't anything to, frown about. But its effect is very mediocre. It does have the ability to protect itself only during that turn, so it is a bit of a condition, and you can swap it out to bring out the alternative version, which we'll have a look to see if it's any better. Morpheus the Dream Mirror Black Knight is a dark attribute warrior type level 8 with 2800 attack and 1000 defense. Its effect is if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. During the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Joy is in a field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon one Morpheus the Dream Mirror White Knight from your deck. You can only use each effect of Morpheus the Dream Mirror Black Knight once per turn. So if this is able to use its effect, it's able to just destroy one card. It's a decent enough effect, but the trade-off to having to swap between the two monsters and to have the relevant field spell up is a bit of a heavy one. Just to get rid of one card, 2800 is fine as an attack force, but it can be easily, put to defense mode. Many players do run multiple copies of enemy controller or have ways of changing battle modes. Even there's a new trap card which was part of, the Mech Lord archetype, where they could negate an attack and swap that monster's attack and defense. That could easily be used as a way of countering this card. Dream Mirror of Joy is a field spell card with the effect during the end phase you can banish this card, activate one Dream Mirror of Terror directly from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Dream Mirror of Joy once per turn. Dream Mirror monsters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects or their monsters' attacks except your Dream Mirror monsters with the highest level. This effect is only applied while you control a light Dream Mirror monster. So this protects your baby versions, so these are the, Miramara is the example, and Icolos, which is the other example. They're both 500 attack and 0 defense, so this forces the attacks onto the strongest monsters. It's decent, but actually, if your opponent just has a simply bigger monster than 2800, they're not worried. They'll just get rid of that monster first and then go after your weaker one. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Ram is a fire attribute beast warrior type level 3 with 800 attack and 200 defense. And its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can discard one card, then target one fire formation spell or trap card you control, set one fire formation spell or trap with a different name directly from your deck. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Fire Fist monster, you can set one fire formation spell or trap card directly from your deck with a different name from the cards in your graveyard. You can only use each effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Ram once per turn. So this essentially helps you to refuel your back row by bringing out these fire formation cards. It's a decent enough effect, and you can just trade off one card to bring that out. Alternatively, if this happens to be special summoned by a Fire Fist monster, it also covers that form of summoning to be able to search, so it can be used both in normal and special summoning conditions. Fire Formation Dome is a continuous spell card with the effect when this card is activated, you can ritual summon one Beast Warrior type ritual monster from your hand by attributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed its level. If this face-up card is sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, you can target one Fire Fist monster in your graveyard and special summon it. You can only use this effect of Fire Formation Dome once per turn. You can only activate one Fire Formation Dome per turn. So this is actually quite unusual. Most cards that ritual summon monsters tend to be ritual spells themselves. but this happens to be a continuous spell. The condition is very similar to any of the other ritual spells out there. Most of them do require you to either meet the level requirement of the monster. For a land, it's a level 6, so you need at least a level 6 monster to meet that condition, or whatever makes that, or potentially exceeds it as well, so you could have a 4 and a 3 to make a 7. That would easily make up the condition. But this does have the ability that if this is sent to the graveyard, you're then able to revive one of your Fire Fist monsters. I don't think your opponent is going to be stupid enough to do that, but if they don't read the cards, which some of the players don't, they're going to give you that advantage by wasting whatever cards or activations they need to. Ultimate Fire Formation Sinto is a counter trap card with the effect when a spell or trap card is activated while you control a Fire Fist monster and a Fire Formation spell or trap card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only activate one Ultimate Fire Formation Sinto per turn. This is a bit like their version of a Solemn Judgment specific for the Fire Fist archetype. The concern is you do need to have both a monster and the Fire Formation spell or trap card on the field to be able to activate this effect. Whilst they do work in tandem to bring each other out, meeting these conditions at the point your opponent has these cards might not necessarily be enough, or you might activate this card during the wrong stage and destroy something they're able to kind of recover from if you're an inexperienced player. Melfi Pony is an Earth Attribute Beast type level 2 with 400 attack and 0 defense. Its effect is, if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, or if an opponent's monster targets this card for an attack, you can return this card to the hand, then you can add one level 2 or lower beast type monster from your graveyard to your hand, except Melfi Pony. During your end phase, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each effect of Melfi Pony once per turn. So the good thing about this is it's able to continuously recover itself. By retrieving itself, it's then able to then recover another monster, which be a level 2 or lower beast type, to the hand as well, so you're continuously cycling through your cards. And of course, during your end phase, it then returns to your side of the field, so you do have that level of protection. It's more one of these annoying cards that your opponent is trying to deal with rather than something that's going to win you the game. Melfi Mummy is an Earth Attribute Beast type rank 2 Exceeds monster with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. It requires 2 level 2 Beast type monsters, and the effect is, once per turn as a quick effect, you can attach one Beast type monster from your hand or face up on the field to this card as material. This card gains effects based on the number of materials attached to it. 3, it cannot be destroyed by battle. 4, you take no damage from battles involving this card. And 5, when an attack is declared involving this card and an attack position monster, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that attack position monster's attack. So again, this is a very annoying card depending on how many materials you get on it. Initially, it doesn't have an effect if it's just summoned through its own summoning requirement, which is just 2 monsters. But for every one you're able to then equip, I know it's only once per turn, but it's once per turn as a quick effect, so it can be used during your turn and your opponent's. Means that you can easily get 4 materials within your opponent's next turn, in which case not only can it not be destroyed by battle, but you also don't take any damage from those battles as well. But the icing on the cake is the 5th and final part of the effect, to be able to constantly do a bit of a Ring of Destruction effect on your opponent. Being able to burn your opponent for that amount of damage, I know it's half considering the rulings to do with Duel Links, but it's enough if you can get your opponent to keep doing this. And remember, it's when an attack is declared involving this card, so you can continue your attacks on your opponent, and it's your opponent's duty to try and stop you from attacking, which is going to be their concern, not so much as just trying to get rid of this card through attacking. Melfi Tag is a quick play spell card with the effect, target one Melfi monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only activate one Melfi Tag per turn. So this is a quick play version of Monster Reborn. It's a decent enough effect, and at least it's able to protect your monster. I argue it's a little bit like the Flute of Summoning Karibo, because you're then able to bring out something to protect your life points, very much like if you were to special summon your Winged Karibo, you'd have some form of defense. Enraged Battleox is an Earth attribute Beast Warrior type level 4 with 1700 attack and 1000 defense. The effect: if a Beast Warrior, or a Winged Beast type monster you control attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. This is a retrain of the original Battleox, considering that was a normal monster. The ability to grant any of your monsters to conduct piercing battle damage is decent, considering it's not just its own type, but actually a couple of other types, so it can be splashed within things like Harpies, Pure Beasts, Beast Warrior type decks as well, Fire Formation decks, you name it. It does have more applications than just being a 1700 decent attack level 4. Beige Vanguard of Darkworld is a dark attribute Fiend type level 4 with 1600 attack and 1300 defense. Its effect is: if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon it from the graveyard. So this is really a vanilla monster. It doesn't have as such an effect, more that when it's discarded, as most of the Dark Worlds prefer to be, you're just able to increase your field presence by spamming it onto the field. It's also useful if you have to use something to just discard as part of an effect, as that way, you can meet the condition very easily. Nimble Musasabi is an Earth attribute Beast type level 2 with 800 attack and 100 defense. Its effect is: when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. You can also special summon up to 2 Nimble Musasabi from your deck to your opponent's side of the field in face-up attack position. This card can't be tributed for a tribute summon. Whilst this is a decent enough effect, and it does the 500 points of damage, and potentially you can do more levels of damage because this will affect the opponent and not you. These are small amounts of damage. Remember, with Duel Links, it's half the damage, so that's 250 points of damage per one of these. And it's supposed to be like an evil version of Nimble Momonga, but it does have the benefit of stopping your opponent from using them for a tribute summon. If they were able to tribute summon off of this effect, I would be very concerned about using this card at all. Heroic Retribution Sword is a trap card with the effect: target one face-up heroic monster you control. Equip this card to that target. All battle damage you take from battles involving the equipped monster is also inflicted to your opponent. After damage calculation, destroy any opponent's monster that battles the equipped monster. So the good thing about this card is it does protect your heroic monsters from any battle damage, so that does protect you if you're on low life points. And it's also very useful if, for example, your opponent has a very strong monster on the field and you have a weak one, and that would essentially be the game end for you, as this can also get rid of your opponent's monster that happens to battle the monster equipped by this effect. Mogmol is an Earth attribute Beast type level 2 with 800 attack and 800 defense. Its effect is: when this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it from the graveyard in the face-up defense position. You can only use the effect of Mogmol once per duel. So this being a once per duel effect is fine, because essentially what you want to do is you want to revive this and go into either your Ronin Raccoon Sendayu, or it could be used for a tribute summon for a level 5 or a level 6 monster. It meets those conditions quite easily, or it can just be used to protect your life points for another attack. Heroic Challenger Night Watchman is a level 4 Earth attribute warrior type with 1200 attack and 300 defense. And the effect is: if this card attacks a defense position monster your opponent controls before damage calculation, you can destroy that monster. It's very decent against certain types of decks, for example Subterras, which love being in defense mode, but it's very niche, and considering its attack points, it's not likely to remain on the field after it's been summoned for that long. Fire Formation Tensu is a continuous spell card with the effect: during your main phase, you can normal summon one Beast Warrior type monster in addition to your normal summonal set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. All Beast Warrior type monsters you control gain 100 attack. So this card helps to spam the field a little by giving you an additional normal summon. The additional 100 attack is fine, and combined with, I think, the Ties That Bind ability, you're able to then boost those monsters up slightly further as well, which can make the difference within certain duels. Fire Formation Tenken is a continuous trap card with the effect: activate only during your main phase 1. When this card is activated, target one Beast Warrior type monster you control. During this phase, its effects are negated. Also, it is unaffected by the effects of cards other than this card. This applies even if this card leaves the field, and all Beast Warrior type monsters you control gain 300 attack. This card is able to provide your monster with the protection, as it's unaffected by anything your opponent does, or for that matter what you do, which can be a bit of a downside if you've got these cards equipped with things like Power of the Guardian or some other boosting cards. But it does stop, if you've got a decent level monster, a decent attack monster on the field already, you've got that additional 300 attack point boost to look forward to. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Rooster is a fire attribute Beast Warrior type level 3 with 1500 attack and 100 defense. And its effect is, when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Fire Fist monster, you can add one of Fire Fist monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Rooster once per turn. Once per turn, you can send one face-up Fire Formation spell or trap card you control to the graveyard to set one Fire Formation spell or trap card directly from your deck. I like the design of this card because it's able to add a Fire Fist monster directly from the deck to the hand, whereas most of them tend to focus on the searching of the spell and trap cards. This actually focuses on the monsters. The other benefit is you're able to get rid of one of your Fire Formations if it's already used its activated ability, to go for a different one or maybe one of the same, because it doesn't have any restrictions here, and set that directly from your deck to the field. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Buffalo is a fire attribute Beast Warrior type level 4 with 1700 attack and 1000 defense. And its effect is, if this card is in your graveyard, you can send a total of 2 Fire Fist or Fire Formation cards from your hand and or face up to the graveyard to special summon this card from your graveyard. You can only use the effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Buffalo once per turn. Of all the Fire Fist monsters that I've seen so far, this is probably one of the weaker ones. Yes, it's able to special summon itself, but you are having to give up a total of 2 cards in order to do that. It's probably best used for an Xyz summon, and that's why I think it's been designed to do so. And the final rare card is UA Blockbacker. This is an Earth attribute warrior type level 7 with 1600 attack and 2700 defense. And its effect is, you can special summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to the hand except UA Blockbacker. You can only special summon UA Blockbacker once per turn this way. Once per turn, when your opponent special summons a monster, you can change their battle positions, and if you do, negate their effects. This is one of the cards that I'm really annoyed about when I had to face it, because there was barely any ways to kind of out it. When it was summoned that way, if you used an extra deck monster, it would just go to defense mode and you could really not do anything. Even if it had an effect, you were just shut down from using it. It's definitely one of the nightmare cards out of the UAs that I just hope that people don't pick up again. But from what I've seen from Duel Links, it's not the case. So which card was your favourite out of the secret rares? Mine personally was Kusanagi, just because the ability to shut down those trap cards, it's really useful. It can be used several times because it requires 3 materials. It's much better than some of the other cards that are out there. I would argue it's better than Wiretap or some of the other trap cards, because those are conditional, and those could be drawn at the wrong time, whereas Kusanagi sits firmly in the extra deck slot. It might use up one of your slots, but it's fine, and most warrior type decks tend to special summon quite heavily anyway, so it's easy to meet the condition of summoning it. Anything you didn't like as well, please leave in the comments down below. I always like to hear what you guys think. Which cards do you think are just added for pack filler? For example, I think In Range Battle Ox is just a pack filler. That's my example. We're going to be covering the new cards. Tremendous Fire is a normal spell card with the effect inflict 1000 points of damage to your opponent's life points and 500 points of damage to your life points. This is a decent enough effect, but of course with the new rulings for Duel Links, the burn effect damage is halved, so your opponent will take 500 and you'll take 250. Kanekabuto is an aqua type water attribute level 3 with 650 attack and 900 defense. It's a monster crab with huge claws for clipping enemies to little pieces. It's simply one of the pack filler cards, much like any of the other ones are. It won't have any use. Wilmy is an earth attribute beast type level 4 with 1000 attack and 1200 defense. Whilst it is a beast type and actually synergizes with a number of the other beast types, it's simply another normal type monster. Wow Warrior is a water attribute fish type level 4 with 1250 attack and 900 defense. It being a normal monster, it has no effect, and it's again one of those pack fellas. Des Koala is a dark attribute beast type level 3 with 1100 attack and 1800 defense. Its effect is inflict 400 damage to your opponent for each card in their hand. Of course, it'll be half that because of the new rulings, but even so, a 1800 defense monster, even if you aren't going to use it for any other purposes, for example, Xyz summoning or tribute summoning using it, it's still quite decent, because at least it might protect you for a turn. Jar Robber is a quick play spell card with the effect: you can only activate this card when Pot of Greed is activated, negate the effect of the Pot of Greed, and draw one card from your deck. As far as I know, there's only 1 or 2 characters' abilities that have the chance of using Pot of Greed, so it's very niche. I think Jaden has a character ability which allows him to use one of a number of forbidden cards, one of those being Pot of Greed, and even then it's still very conditional. I think you have to have Jaden at 1000 or less life points in order to be able to use Pot of Greed. Tower of Babel is a continuous trap card with the effect: each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card. When that spell card resolves, if the 4th spell counter is placed on this card, destroy this card, and if you do, the player who activated the spell card at that time takes 3000 points of damage. Remember, it will be half, it's 1500 points, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, if it's been a longer duel and your opponent's down on life points and you've managed to get 3 spell counters on it, your opponent isn't going to want to auto-lose. They'll stop using any spells just to prevent a new spell counter from being added. Alternatively, if they're running a very spell-heavy deck and you're only able to get a couple of counters on this card, they could actually do the reverse to you. So it does have its benefits and its disadvantages. I liken it a little bit to Blasting the Ruins, which is another one of those traps that does up to 3000 points of damage. But this is actually a little bit more usable. I think Blasting the Ruins requires you to have like 30 monsters in your graveyard. Within Duel Links, it's not likely to happen unless you are dedicating your deck almost entirely to monsters. Atomic Firefly is a light attribute insect type level 1 with 100 attack and 200 defense. The effect: when this face-up card on the field attacks or is attacked and it is destroyed as a result of battle, the player who destroyed it takes 1000 points of damage. It's only 500 points of damage, but it's still quite decent if you're running a rank 1 Xyz deck. I know there aren't too many of those around at the moment, but when those come out, trust me, when number, I think it's 13 and 31 come out, then that's going to be useful. Also with number 54, Lionheart, they're very much synergized with each other, so that's definitely a route you can use with this card. Catnip Kitty is an Earth attribute beast type level 2 with 0 attack and 500 defense. Its effect is: this card cannot be attacked if there is another beast type monster on your side of the field. Once per turn, you can make the defense of one monster on your opponent's side of the field 0 until the end of this turn. I do remember it being used within Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I think it was episode 35, when Chaz Princeton was facing his brother Slade, or I think it was Jagger, and what he had to do was create a deck using monsters that have 500 or less attack points. He went over to this underground well where he was able to pick up some trash cards, including this one. He never actually used its effect, he just used it as a defense-based monster. I think there is a way of you actually having some protection. If you have 2 of these, then because they're both beast types, it's a case of you create that perfect attack loop, which is where you cannot target either monster. Same thing happens if you've got 2 Magician Valkyria on the field. Because there are 2 spellcasters, you can't target one, as the other one will target the other, and it becomes a continuous attack loop. It's decent, but you would have to run it in a very niche style of deck, one that actually forces your opponent's monsters to go to defense mode in order to use this ability. And it also would require them to have those monsters in face-up defense position. So I think there's Light of Intervention, which could pair to an extent with this card. Token Festival is a normal trap card with the effect: when a token is special summoned, destroy as many tokens on the field as possible. and if you do, inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each token destroyed. So you'll likely only be able to generate maybe 2 to 3 maximum, as you've got a max field of 3 monster zones. So that's about 450 points of damage once it's halved by the Duel Links rulings. It's not enough for any kind of threat and actually is too inconsistent to be able to rely upon. Howl of the Wild is a continuous trap card with the effect, when a monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each face-up beast-type monster you control. Right, so this is actually a little bit more consistent. It does essentially more burn damage. So if you've got a full field, you could do 450 points of damage. Considering you've got 3 monster zones and it does half the amount of damage, that's fine. It's more so of a win harder card if you're already in that momentum where you can actually destroy your opponent. And consider that it can be any time your monster destroys another monster by battle. So if your opponent has 3 monsters on the field, you could use this effect up to 3 times within that turn. So that initial 450 points of damage could turn up to a maximum of 1,350 points of damage. That's not even taking into account the attack damage that you're doing if your opponent's monsters are in attack position. Cursed Bill is an equipped spell card with the effect, when the equipped monster is destroyed and this card is sent to the graveyard, inflict damage to the player who controlled the equipped monster equal to the monster's original defense. Okay, so this is very similar to something like Nitro Unit, but that affects a monster that is equipped with it in terms of its attack points. This focuses on defense stat. Whilst this can be useful if you use it against Destiny Hero Defender or monsters like that, the tendency are for defense position monsters to be used as either tributes to get rid of this, or for other things, Xyz summoning, synchro summoning, or potentially if it's things like Subterrors, they just flip themselves over, back face down, which means this card actually goes straight to the graveyard rather than actually being able to trigger, which is a major downside of it. You would have to invest into a very anti-offensive deck in order to benefit from this effect. Creepy Coney is an Earth attribute beast type level 3 with 1000 attack and 1900 defense. Its effect is inflict 1000 damage to your opponent for each face-up normal monster you control, except tokens. This is a decent effect because you could be doing up to 1000 points of damage, and if you're running maybe a normal style of deck, then this is actually a decent condition to have. It's also very defensive, so it does have that protection, and if you're running, say, level 3 monsters that are also defensive and actually work alongside the strategy, you can just use those monsters as Xyz materials for an Xyz summon. Ego Boost is a quick play spell card with the effect, when a monster declares an attack, target one face-up monster on the field, it gains 1000 attack until the end of the battle phase. What I like about the design of this card is it reacts to when your opponent attacks. So this is really useful if you've got a weaker monster and it will suddenly get enough to be able to take down one of your opponent's monsters. It's particularly useful against things like Blue Eyes White Dragon decks or Dark Magician decks that like to have the advantage and then like to trigger various effects to actually destroy your back row. This can just be used in response, but the downside is it has to be when an opponent's monster declares an attack or when you declare an attack. So it's limited to that very brief moment in time. It would have been more niche and probably a little bit better if it had been able to be activated at any stage of the battle step, whether that be when you declare the attack or during the damage calculation itself. Fiery Fervor is a normal trap card with the effect, target one face-up monster you control, equip this card to that target. If your opponent controls a monster with attack higher than that same monster's original attack, the attack of the equipped monster becomes double the equipped monster's original attack during the damage step only. This is very useful because it does provide you with that level of attack boost, but it does depend on what your opponent is running. If they've got something that's a bit higher, then you do have that advantage. But a lot of decks actually just try and bring out additional monsters as opposed to focusing on just an additional stat lineup. Also, consider that your opponent is probably going to try and wipe out the card by either using MST, Cosmic Cyclone, Dicefoon, or actually wipe out the monster that is equipped with this card. Gagaga Back is a quick play spell card with the effect, during the turn a Gagaga monster you control was destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. Special summon as many monsters from your graveyard as possible that were destroyed by battle this turn in face-up defense position. then take 600 damage for each monster special summoned by this effect. You can only activate one Gagaga back per turn. The good thing about this card is, whilst it does have quite a big cost to it, potentially if you're reviving 3 monsters, that's 1,800 life points, that's almost half your life points. But if you can return those monsters and you can protect those monsters for the rest of that turn, the following turn, if you've got something like Gagaga Magician on the field, you can adjust its level and then perform an Xyz summon. It's good to be used in a comfortable position because it requires that many life points, and is probably a very dead draw if you have it at a point where you've got 1,000 or less life points. Zexal Weapon Unicorn Sphere is a light attribute beast type level 4 with 1,900 attack and 0 defense. Its effect is you can target one number C39 Utopia Ray you control, equip this card from your hand to that target. It gains 1,900 attack. If the equipped monster battles an opponent's monster, the opponent's monster's effect is negated during the battle phase only. You can only control one Zexal Weapon Unicorn Sphere. What I like about the card is it does provide a significant attack boost. Your normal Utopia is 2,500 attack, making it a 4,400 attack monster once it's been equipped. That's enough to get over a lot of different monsters, outside of something like a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, or monsters that have abilities that keep themselves on the field. This was used when Yuma and Astral was facing number 96 Dark Mist, because it actually shut down its abilities, especially when it was using its Chaos form. Full Force Strike is a normal spell card with the effect, target one phase-up monster you control. This turn it cannot be destroyed by battle. Players take no battle damage from its attacks, and if it destroys an opponent's monster, destroy that opponent's monster after damage calculation. This is actually a very decent card because it almost negates the battle phase. You attack into the monster, you don't lose your monster. Your opponent doesn't lose any life points, but they lose the monster in the process. And actually, if it's one of their key monsters, sometimes that's actually a way of outing them. I liken it a little bit to things like Blue Eyes Twin Dragon for the Blue Eyes White Dragon archetype deck, because that's sometimes used for its banish effect, especially if your opponent's running things like Power of the Guardian, which can protect their monsters from being destroyed by battle by just removing one spell counter from it. And every time it gets attacked or attacks, it generates these spell counters anyway. Zexal Weapon Phoenix Bow is a fire attribute winged beast type level 3 with 1,100 attack and 0 defense. And its effect is you can target one face-up number C39 Utopia Ray you control, equip this card from your hand to that target, it gains 1,100 attack. When the equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. You can only control one face-up Zexal Weapon Phoenix Bow. This is a consistent way of constantly doing burn damage. It might only be 500 points of damage each time, but that will slowly build up, especially if your opponent isn't running anything that generates life points. Heroic Challenger Double Lance is an Earth attribute warrior type level 4 with 1,700 attack and 900 defense. And its effect is, when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Heroic Challenger Double Lance from your hand or graveyard in face-up defense position. This card cannot be used as a Synchro Material monster. This card cannot be used as an Xyz material, except for the Xyz summon of a warrior type monster. What this card does is it's a benefit for your Heroic Challenger archetype, considering that's what it is. It's really good for either bringing out your Excalibur, or you do have the concern with Kusanagi that it does need 3 level 4 warrior type monsters. By using this card's effect, you've already met part of the condition. You just need to get another Heroic Challenger on the field to be able to go into Kusanagi. Heroic Challenger Extra Sword is an Earth attribute warrior type level 4 with 1,000 attack and 1,000 defense. And its effect is an Xyz monster that was summoned using this card as Xyz material gains this effect. When it is Xyz summoned, it gains 1,000 attack. This is particularly useful because it's not conditional based on a particular archetype, so it doesn't have to be within the Heroic Challengers. It's simply, you've got a rank for Xyz monster just gains 1,000 attack. So if you look at something like Utopia, that becomes a 3,500 attack monster, which can clear over most other monsters. You've got other versions of Xyz monsters that do benefit from this type of effect. I know that Photon Pappy Operative would really gain an ability from this. so that become a 3100 attack monster, with the ability to detach another monster to flip an opponent's monster from defense to attack, and force that monster to lose 600 attack, increasing the amount of damage you can do within that first attack. Zeal Weapon Ultimate Shield is an Earth attribute Aqua type level 4 with 0 attack and 2000 defense. And its effect is, when this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one of your banished Xyz monsters, special summon that target in face-up defense position. You can target one Utopian monster you control, equip this monster on the field to that target, it gains 2000 defense. You can only control one face-up Zexal Weapon Ultimate Shield. What this card does is it's able to recover a banished Xyz monster. That's quite decent, but actually it's the only example that I can think of a Zexal weapon that has the ability to boost your Utopia monster's defense points. I think all of the other ones basically focus on attack. Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing, but you do want your Utopia mostly for its offensive abilities, considering that even with its own effect, it can actually defend itself and negate attacks, so you don't really need to boost up the stats any further. Stoic Challenge is an equipped spell card with the effect, you can only control one Stoic Challenge, equip only to a face-up Xyz monster that has Xyz material. It gains 600 attack for each Xyz material attached to a monster you control, and any battle damage your opponent takes from battles involving it and their monster is doubled, but its effects cannot be activated. During your opponent's end phase, send this card to the graveyard. When this card leaves the field, destroy the equipped monster. So the whole idea of this card is to be able to boost the amount of damage that you can do with one of your Xyz monsters. Yes, it does lose the ability, but actually doing double damage can be really useful. Imagine something like Kusanagi. If that's got 3 materials on it, it's already a 2500 attack monster. Add the 1800 it would get, that's 4300 attack points, and then you double any damage your opponent takes. It could be enough to OTK your opponent, or if they've got, say, some traps on the field, you can just attach to negate those trap cards and still be able to do a decent amount of damage. The kind of downside is it only lasts really until your opponent's end phase, so that means you can really use it for one turn. Very much is reliant on you using it as your final OTK or FTK if you have the potential to do that. Zexal Weapon Sleipnir Male is a light attribute beast type level 4 with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. And its effect is, you can target one Utopian monster you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. It gains 1000 attack. When this card you control is sent to your graveyard, because the equipped monster was destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle or card effect, you can target one Utopia monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. You can only control one Zexal Weapon Sleipnir Male. So this is just a way of reviving it. You can think of it a bit like Time Machine, as that's got a similar type of effect. It's quite useful to just return one of your monsters, one of your Utopias, but other than to sustain your field presence, it doesn't really have any other benefits. The 1000 attack points are nice. It would make Utopia a 3500 attack monster, which can get over most types of threats. SZW Fenrir Sword is a light attribute beast type level 4 with 1800 attack and 1100 defense. And its effect is, when this card is normal summoned, you can target one Zexal Weapon monster you control. That is an equipped spell. Special summon that target in defense position. You can target one Utopian monster you control. Equip this card from your hand to that target. When the equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can target one Zexal Weapon monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. So unlike most of the other Zexal Weapon monsters that tend to equip to Utopia, what this does is completely opposite. It tries to detach your Zexal Weapon to special summon it. It does go to defense mode, so you can't really use it to beat over your opponent's monsters unless you've got something like Attack Defense Changer in your graveyard or some other effect which lets you switch battle modes. It does let you then target your Utopia monster and can have a revival effect, but it doesn't actually give it any attack boost, which is very unusual. It is also a newer addition to the series. I think it's one of the latest forms of support cards that Yuma has received. Phantasos the Dream Mirror Friend is a light attribute Beast Warrior type level 4 with 900 attack and 1900 defense. And its effect is, if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, you can target one level 8 or lower Dream Mirror monster in your graveyard, except Phantasos the Dream Mirror Friend. Special summon it in defense position. During the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Terror is in a field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card to special summon one Phantasos, the Dream Mirror Foe, from your deck. You can only use each effect of Phantasos, the Dream Mirror Friend, once per turn. So a lot of the Dream Mirror archetype, they switch for their, alternative version, and obviously the foe version is the alternative to this. Whilst this does have a decent defense point stat to it, and it can revive level 8 or lower monsters, so it is a bit like a Monster Reborn, it does come at the downside of having to be dependent on having the Dream Mirror of Terror field spell currently on the field to be able to kind of swap out. That's the major disadvantage of this card. Phantasos the Dream Mirror Foe is a dark attribute Beast Warrior type level 4 with 1900 attack and 900 defense. And its effect is, if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Dream Mirror monster, this card can attack directly this turn. During the main or battle phase, if Dream Mirror of Joy is in a field zone, as a quick effect, you contribute this card, special summon one Phantasos the Dream Mirror Friend, from your deck. You can only use each effect of Phantasos the Dream Mirror Foe once per turn. Again, these are just swapping one for the other. The ability to attack directly is fine, because that 1900 isn't anything to sneeze at. That's almost half your opponent's life points if they've not restored them at any point. But it's a one-off effect. If that had been continual and it had been able to do that maybe every turn without having to have this ridiculous restriction on it, I mean, the archetype itself isn't overpowered, and I just don't see this as being a viable option outside of maybe using it as part of a Chaos build. That's the only way I can use things like Chaos Sorcerer or Chaos Dragon Levineer. Melfi Rabbi is an Earth attribute Beast type level 2 with 0 attack and 2100 defense. It's a normal monster, so that means it doesn't have an effect, but since it's part of the Melfi archetype anyway, and they've already got other features and other monsters within the archetype, that's why this has just been put in there as well. Melfi Feni is an Earth attribute Beast type level 2 with 100 attack and 300 defense. Its effect is, if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, or if an opponent's monster targets this card for an attack, you can return this card to the hand, then you can special summon one beast monster from your hand, except Melfi Feni. During your end phase, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each effect of Melfi Feni once per turn. So, like some of the other Melfis, what they do is they like to retreat back to the hand, and actually swapping out for another beast-type monster isn't bad. You've got some particularly powerful ones. Green Baboon has got 2600 attack. You've got another couple of them that do feature above that, and so you can just swap out. There aren't any real conditions to it. It's not an attack limitation, it's not a defense limitation or a level limitation, so you're actually free to do that and actually stop your opponent from, say, attacking you with their monster. It might be stronger than this, well, probably will be stronger than an 100 attack monster, but be weaker than something like a 2600 attack monster, stopping their battle phase. And potentially, since this recovers and goes back onto the field during your end phase, it's not a case of you're having to constantly re-summon this card. It simply will return to your field. So you've already got that advantage. And the best thing is, that beast monster that you've special summoned, it gets to stay on the field. It's not that it has to go back to the hand. So you have the board presence advantage as well. The Big March of Animals is a quick play spell card with the effect, until the end of this turn, all face-up beast-type monsters on your side of the field gain 200 attack for each beast-type monster on your side of the field. So it can range from anywhere between 200 attack to 600 attack. That doesn't seem like that much, especially in terms of damage, but it could be enough to be able to get over some of your opponent's monsters. I mean, the monster you see at the very back of the picture, I think it's the king of all animals. I can't remember the Behemoth, I think that's its name. It's got 2700 attack, so at its weakest that'll be 2900. At its strongest it's a 3300 attack monster. Enough to devastate your opponent, especially since they probably won't be seeing this coming. and it being a quick play spell card, if your opponent tries to use something like MST on it, you could just trigger this and stop your opponent from their battle phase. Beast Soul Swap is a normal trap card with the effect target one beast type monster you control, return it to the hand, and if you do, special summon one beast type monster from your hand with the same level as the monster that was returned to the hand. Now you might be asking me, why does that actually make any sense, or why does that really matter? There's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it does allow you to re-attack with that monster, because you're essentially swapping one monster for another, and it's considered a different summon, it's a different monster. So if you've got something like Big Koala that's doing 2,700 points of attack damage twice, that can be enough to deplete your opponent's life points, or at least get rid of a couple of their monsters. It's also good when paired with Wild Nature's Release. That's a spell card with the effect to merge your monsters, I think it's your beast type monsters, attack and defense points. So for Big Koala, that makes it a 4,700 attack monster. It has 2,700 attack and 2,000 defense. So you get that initial push, so you can get over some of your opponent's strongest monsters. Use this effect to take it back to the hand, put it back onto the field. Yes, it loses the stat boost, but actually it doesn't have the disadvantage of Wild Nature's Release, which means that typically those monsters that have used this effect will be destroyed at the end of the turn. You have that level of protection, and you have a double attack from that monster. Kaki, Gorilla of Dark World, is a Dark Attribute Fiend type level 2 with 300 attack and 500 defense. Its effect is, if this card is discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target one monster on the field and destroy that target. It's probably one of the more useful Dark World monsters out there. Yes, it's not particularly powerful, but it's not something that you're just going to stick onto the field. There's another one that actually destroys your opponent's spell or trap cards as well, and this is flexible. It can destroy either monsters on yours or your opponent's side of the field. So if you've got something that triggers off of destruction, you can always use that. Or if you've got an opponent's monster which is a bit of a threat, you can always get rid of that card as well. A major upset is a normal trap card with the effect tribute one face-up attack position at level 2 or lower monster you control. Return all level 7 or higher special summon monsters to the hand. This is a very niche type of card, and as you can see from there, it shows Moki Moki as the weaker level monster. Whilst this is an okay effect, it's incredibly specific, and you'd have to be running a very weak series of monsters to be able to benefit from this at all. It also means that your opponent has to be running a very specific type of deck as well to be able to benefit from it. It can be used. One of the examples that I can think of that it's very useful against is something like a Blue Eyes White Dragon deck, or maybe a Dark Magician deck. Cards that like to special summon. Or actually I can see it being used against, there's the Shooting Star Dragon deck that might be useful. But again, if your opponent just sees a weak monster, are they really going to be that concerned? They can always just use one of their tuner monsters, bring that out, and the likelihood is it's going to be lower than a level 7, so it's not going to be affected by this card. Heroic Challenger Spartan is an Earth Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 1,600 attack and 1,000 defense. And its effect is, once per turn when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can target one face-up heroic monster you control, except this card. This card gains attack equal to that face-up monster's original attack until the end of the battle phase. This is quite a useful effect, but if your opponent just reads this card, they're not going to battle into this monster until they've at least cleared the other monsters. If you're able to target this card with something like Ring of Magnetism and force all of your opponent's attacks against this monster, that's one way of boosting this card up in terms of how useful it can be. The downside of Ring of Magnetism, of course, is it does reduce your monster that it's equipped with by 500 attack points. But if you've got some of the other stronger heroic monsters on the field, this will at least have maybe double its attack points, if not slightly more. Heroic Chance is a normal spell card with the effect target one face-up heroic monster you control. This turn double its attack, but it cannot attack your opponent directly. You can only activate one Heroic Chance per turn. This is very useful because being able to double a monster's attack, similar to something like a Megamorph, is with no real cost. If you're going to try and defeat your opponent, you're always going to try and use this effect on a monster that you're not intending to attack directly and to just wipe out their strongest monster. Remember, they still take battle damage, there are no other limitations to it, and it's simply a once per turn effect. So it's very decent and can actually win games. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Hawk is a fire attribute beast warrior type level 3 with 200 attack and 1500 defense. And its effect is, if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, you can set one fire formation spell card directly from your deck. While you control a fire formation spell or trap card, all Fire Fist monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense. This is a very decent card because it not only boosts up your Fire Fist monsters, it does give itself a little bit of protection. And of course, if this is just destroyed, it can replace itself with a Fire Formation spell card, which some of them actually search for other Fire Fist monsters, being able to extend your combos whilst thinning your deck at the same time. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Wolf is a fire attribute beast warrior type level 3 with 0 attack and 1900 defense. And its effect is, if this card is flipped face up, you can set one Fire Formation trap card directly from your deck. Then if this card was flip summoned, you can also set one Fire Formation spell card directly from your deck. This card isn't an offensive version, it's basically able to set both a spell and a trap card, that's a Fire Formation card. It does give you that level of advantage, but it's mostly there just as a defensive card, and it can be used for a rank 3 Xyz summon. Heroic Challenger Ambush Soldier is an Earth attribute warrior type level 1 with 0 attack and 0 defense. And its effect is, during your standby phase, you can tribute this card, special summon up to 2 Heroic Challenger monsters from your hand and or graveyard, except Heroic Challenger Ambush Soldier. You can only use this effect of Heroic Challenger Ambush Soldier once per turn. When you do, you can banish this card from your graveyard to make all Heroic Challenger monsters you currently control become level 1. This is a very decent card. There is another version of this, I think, within the Gladiator Beast archetype, that if it's on the field and it lets you go into your next turn, it can trigger the same ability to get 2 Gladiator Beast monsters onto the field. The problem is you're going to have this card be protected until you can actually activate this effect. It has to go through your opponent's entire turn before it can do this. So there's really the downside. If you can get this out very early in the game, maybe your opponent might not be able to do anything, or potentially you might need to kind of restrict their plays before you can actually trigger this effect. As for the secondary part of this, it's very much to do with a card that, basically for the secondary part of the effect, this was very much to make number 54 Lionheart, as adjusting all the Heroic Challenger monsters to level 1 met the conditions. It's an easier way of getting out rank 1 Xyz monsters, and it's definitely something I would consider maybe running 1 or 2 of, but I wouldn't run more than that in case you brick with your hand. Heroic Challenger Clasped Sword is an Earth attribute warrior type level 1, with 300 attack and 100 defense. And its effect is, when this card is special summoned by the effect of a Heroic Challenger monster, you can add 1 Heroic Challenger monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of Heroic Challenger Clasped Sword once per turn. So this actually works very well with Ambush Soldier, because that will special summon this card, and it doesn't have to be from the hand, the graveyard, it can be from the deck as well. Just by doing that, you're able to get an additional search, and that adds to your consistency, and it improves the options you have when running the deck. Chaos Seed is a normal spell card with the effect, if you control both a light and a dark attribute monster, you can target one of your banished light or dark warrior type monsters, add it to your hand. You can only activate 1 Chaos Seed per turn. This works and is intended to work with the Buster Blader archetype. It's not Buster Blader, it's the Blackluster Soldier, that's it. Because most of their monsters are either light or dark attributes, and so a number of them actually, when they're banished, usually can't be recovered, unless you've, of course, got something like this. Bellerophon, Mystical Beast of the Forest, is an Earth attribute beast type tuner monster. It's a level 2 with 400 attack and 900 defense. And its effect is, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 level 2 or lower beast type monster in your graveyard, except Bellerophon, Mystical Beast of the Forest, special summon it in attack position or face down defense position. You can only use this effect of Bellerophon, Mystical Beast of the Forest once per turn. So the whole idea of this card is it works alongside the Baby Raccoon archetype. It's very good for that type of thing. It's also useful for synchro monsters. I think it was introduced back in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, around the time when Team 5Ds was facing Team Unicorn, who specialised in beast-type monsters. Even though I don't think they use this card, it's useful for bringing out some low-level beast-type monsters, and it can help to trigger off their effects. So you can actually go for an easier Synchro Summon using this card, or you can go into number 64, Ronin Raccoon Sendayu. And the final rare card is UA Goalkeeper. This is an Earth Attribute Warrior type level 6, with 1000 attack and 2800 defense. And its effect is, you can special summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to the hand except UA Goalkeeper. You can only special summon UA Goalkeeper once per turn this way, and once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can target one UA monster you control. Once during this turn, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. This is a quick effect. What this card does is it provides one of your other UA monsters with a level of protection. It can be useful considering some of them don't have their own inbuilt protections, but it's actually a supplementary ability, and some of them can actually, I think there's one of them that when it's attacking, your opponent cannot activate any spell or trap cards for until the end of the damage step. So there's that, but it's just an addition. It's really nice. It's got 2800 defense. There's no way you're kind of getting over that very easily, and it's definitely one of the threatening cards that you have to consider. So I'd like to know in the comments down below, what is your favourite card out of this selection? Is there anything that particularly stood out for you? For me, my personal favourite was Tower of Babel. It's an old card that I have myself, and if used correctly, it can force your opponent into a situation where they cannot use spell cards. My least favourite is probably, some of the normal type monsters. They're just pack fillers. So there's that Kanekabuto, you've got the Melfi Rabbi, and some other very weak monsters in there as well. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, share it if you can, it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.